Imagine waking up on an ordinary morning, opening your window, and realizing that the place where you live has simply ceased to exist for the rest of the world. Not because it was destroyed by war, not because it was swallowed by nature, but because someone decided to erase every record of it. No maps, no official documents, no signs indicating that the place was ever there, as if an entire town had been carefully removed from history. It sounds like fiction. It sounds like the plot of a suspense movie. Yet over the last few decades, several researchers have found traces of locations that vanished from official records without a convincing explanation. Some were abandoned, others destroyed, and some simply ceased to exist on paper. The inevitable question is, why? What could be so important to justify completely erasing a town from maps? And more importantly, who would have the power to do that without leaving a trace? For centuries, maps were far more than simple geographic representations. They were instruments of power. Controlling a map meant controlling knowledge, defining borders, hiding natural resources, protecting military operations, and even rewriting history itself. A single detail, drawn or erased, could shift disputes between empires, alter trade routes, and influence entire wars. That is why, when a town disappears from a map, the initial reaction is usually to assume a printing error. After all, ancient maps were far from perfect. But what about when the disappearance happens across dozens of different documents? When administrative records vanish at the same time? When photographs can no longer be found and public archives simply offer no answers? At that point, it stops being a mistake. It becomes a mystery. It is precisely this kind of story that begins with a simple question asked by a local historian. While researching old cartographic records, he noticed something strange. On maps produced over several decades, a small village consistently appeared between two mountains and near a major river. There were road markings, an indication of a church, a few buildings, and even references in transport documents. Nothing seemed out of the ordinary. However, upon comparing those maps with more recent versions, that village had completely disappeared. There was no note indicating a name change, relocation, or destruction. It was as though someone had simply wiped that point off the map. Intrigued, he decided to investigate. The first step seemed simple: search for the town's administrative records, certificates, population censuses, tax collection documents. The outcome was unexpected. A few documents referenced the location. Others, produced just a few years later, mentioned absolutely nothing. It was as if all the bureaucracy related to the village had been abruptly cut off. No official decree explained the change. No law authorized the removal of the name. No local newspaper reported a disaster significant enough to justify the disappearance. That was when an even more disturbing detail surfaced. In a regional library, hidden among boxes of documents awaiting cataloging, a diary belonging to a former postal worker turned up. Among notes about deliveries and mail routes, a handwritten line caught his attention. Starting this week, no mail is to be sent to that village. New instructions came from the capital. There was no signature, no justification, just that observation. And curiously, just a few pages later, the village's name stopped appearing entirely in the rest of the diary. Was it just a coincidence? Or did that note reveal that an administrative decision had been made away from the public eye? The more researchers analyzed the case, the more questions emerged. Old aerial photographs showed structures that looked like streets and buildings right where the old maps indicated the village's existence. Recent images, on the other hand, revealed only dense vegetation covering the entire area. Nature seemed to have reclaimed the space, but there were no clear signs of a gradual abandonment. It was as if everything had happened far too fast. Residents of neighboring towns also offered curious accounts. Some elderly locals claimed to vaguely remember hearing their parents talk about a small settlement in that region. Others said they had never heard the name before. The memories were contradictory. That made drawing any conclusion even harder. Human memory can fail, of course, But when dozens of people offer conflicting versions of the exact same place, doubt remains. Did the town truly exist as the maps suggest? Or was part of this story built by the mere passage of time? While new searches were underway, another unexpected piece of the puzzle appeared. A set of old photographs from a family collection showed a simple town square, a few wooden houses, and a church with a very distinct tower. On the back of one image, a single inscription read, Autumn Festival, 1958. No town name, no extra details. Just that single image frozen in time. When experts compared the church's architecture with historical records of the region, they realized that the building didn't match any officially cataloged church. It was as if the building in the photograph had never existed. By this point, the investigation had crossed the boundary of mere historical curiosity. The more evidence turned up, the less sense it all made. A town doesn't just disappear from maps. It leaves tracks in photos, documents, civil records, school books, and in people's memories. Erasing all of that takes time, organization, and above all, a motive. But what motive could possibly justify such a massive effort to hide a seemingly ordinary place? Before any answers could surface, a new document appeared, and it was about to change the direction of this story completely.